You're listening to the Ballet Piano Podcast, lifting the lid on dance accompaniment.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to this episode of the Ballet Piano Podcast. Today, we have a very special In Conversation with you. But first, I'm Matt Gregory, and around the Hobson's dining table with me is Christopher Hobson.
Hello.
Akiko Hobson.
Konnichiwa.
And our very, very special guest, Anita Young, MBE.
Hello, everyone. She's waving.
It's like the Steve Wright show when we all clap, isn't it?
We clap by our microphones. How are you, Anita?
I'm absolutely fantastic. You know, it could be better, actually. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, great.
We're very grateful that you were able to come on.
No, lovely.
Before we go back to the beginning, can we ask you about the MBE? Because I think you're the first person that's been honoured.
How can you get it? I want one.
Yeah.
You want one? I guess you go to Sainsbury's and you ask for one. You might get one. You might get one. What is it? No, it's Asda, isn't it? Buy one, get one free or something. I don't know.
But how did that happen?
Well, I think.
You just get a letter in the post?
Well, obviously there were a lot of people out there that had known me for many, many years and had written something, to the Cabinet Office about what I had achieved. I don't know.
Because you get nominated, don't you?
You get nominated. You're not actually told when you receive the letter. Prince Charles, well, now the King, he actually wrote the letter to say that, I had been awarded this MBE. My brother knew actually before me. He was in South Africa. And I remember him saying to me, please don't say anything to anyone. You've got to keep your trap shut. And I found it
How easy was that?
Well, I am a chatterbox. People that know me very well have to kind of take my batteries out. Do you know what I mean? The ever-ready batteries have to come out to keep me quiet. So it was very hard because I remember I was at White Lodge at the time of the Royal Ballet School, and someone actually said to me about awards and being recognised or whatever, and I was just smiling at them. And then a few weeks afterwards, when it was, sort of out there that I'd got this award, this particular person came up to me and said, I knew there was something cooking up there.
Why did your brother know before you?
Because he had written a letter and
Right.
he was like the main one, the main person. So obviously it would have gone to him first.
Yeah.
And then he told me that I have to be quiet because it could be taken away from me if I kind of blabbed it around.
Yeah.
So it was the hardest 3 weeks of my life, being quiet. My brother came over for the ceremony because, bless her heart, my mum's no longer around. But my brother lives in South Africa and I really wanted him to be there with me. We went to Buckingham Palace. My son and my daughter-in-law, who was pregnant at the time, that was 5 years ago. That's how I know, because she was pregnant.
Wow.
They joined me. It was Princess Royal who gave me the medal, Princess Anne.
Yeah.
She was absolutely superb. I mean, what a character.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying to me during our conversation, what do you intend to do now? And I said, I want to carry on as long as I can teaching. And she took a step back and she said, well, you look good on it. I wanted to say to her, can I have that in writing, please?
Get that on a T-shirt.
That's what we always say, can we get that on a T-shirt?
It was amazing, absolutely amazing. I also had I wore my mum's coat and her shoes and her jewellery because I made sure my mum was there with me. But I had an amazing handbag. It was shaped like a fan.
Can I just cut in?
Yes.
The viewers and listeners, you need to go, if you type into Google Anita Young MBE and go to the Royal Ballet School website, the picture is gorgeous.
Yes.
You have this lovely dress on, this beautiful fascinator, and the handbag is in the shape of an open fan. It's so fantastic.
Listeners and viewers, it's also on our website because I borrowed it from the Royal Ballet School. But
Fantastic.
Put it.
don't tell them.
It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. Do you know, I bought that handbag in Lanzarote
Yeah.
in the Canary Islands, and I put it away for a special occasion, you know. And then this came up. But I must tell you, when you go to the palace,
Yeah, tell us about that.
You can't take anything through. All your handbags are taken. It's like being at the airport, you know. So they're all in their regalia, you know, all dressed
Yeah.
up, like all pomp and ceremony. And this guy said to me, I love your handbag. Where did you buy it? Because I'd like to buy one for my wife. And I said, well, I bought it in Lanzarote, actually.
Oh my god.
And then it was taken away. But I was just saying to Matt, because we had a chat before, you know, the podcast, that you're only allowed water and apple juice. You can't have any alcoholics because you're so near these wonderful paintings and, you know, treasures.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like being in a museum where you can have a guard round there. We were about 5 inches, you know, if that away from a Rembrandt or something.
Yeah.
So they couldn't afford anyone to have a gin and tonic and fall over and mar the painting. So, but it was an incredible afternoon. It was in the ballroom, so you had the
Yeah.
band playing in the background, and it was
Wow.
all very upbeat. And then afterwards, we went to the Ritz. I thought, well, you know, this is
You have
once-
to, don't you?
Yeah.
It's once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Occasion.
It's a short walk from the palace, isn't
Yes.
it? At Green Park.
Yes.
Up that
Yeah.
hill.
Yes.
Yes.
But something else that was interesting, because in the courtyard we have photographs taken. So we had some at the back on what I call the red carpet, which is the one that you
Yeah.
can see with the photograph. Most people had it there, but also the front of the palace. But the Queen was in residence there.
Right.
And I remember, I think it must have been my husband, took a photograph of us and it was taken away. We had to delete it because they said, no, the Queen is in residence and you have just taken a photograph where you can see, you know, where she is.
I see.
They were hot
on it.
Hot,
Wow.
hot. I always remember that. I thought, oh my God, you know, you kind of feel very uncomfortable.
Big Brother style.
Yeah, Big Brother was there, definitely. So we were glad to get to the Ritz afterwards and have a glass of champagne.
Oh God, yeah.
But a great afternoon and felt very, humble.
Where did it all start then? The dancing.
Well, I was actually a very sick child, and from the age of 3, I was under Great Ormond Street Hospital for 9 months. And I won't go completely into the details, but it started off with an illness with me, whooping cough,
Yeah.
and then a court case with my mum and dad at Bow Street Police Station, where my dad was beaten up by neighbours because I used to rattle the cot because I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and these people followed my dad to work. My dad worked in Covent Garden Market as a porter, and they followed him to work one day, and they beat him up. He ended up in hospital. So there was a court case, and it was 1953. I remember it because I was 3 years old. I wasn't there, but my mum told me. But it's all documented because at that time there was a very famous court case going on at Bow Street about Lady Asquith, which people might want to read up about. It kind of hit like Lord Lucan is, you know, disappearing. This was a big case at Bow Street. And then suddenly there was, you know, my mum and dad. So anyway, from what happened to me, I was under the hospital, and it was a child psychologist that suggested to my parents that I take up dance lessons as therapy. So I went to a school in Old Compton Street because, you know, I was a local girl. Called Miss Joan Francis. And I used to just sit on the chair, not do anything. And my mum, you know, working class family I came from, humble beginnings, she said, you know, I've taken you now for, you know, months. I'm paying my 6 pence a week to take you there.
Yeah.
You know, are you going to do anything? And of course, like me, being stubborn,
I've never experienced that with you, Anita.
the day that she said, I'm not taking you anymore, was the day I was going to get off the stool and do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. And then when I was 6, I took my primary, RAD,
Yeah.
and I got honours. And I never looked back after that. And just recently, the RAD have honoured me by putting up a photograph in their gallery of me after I'd taken my RAD exam, grade 5 with honours. And it's in celebration of 100 years of RAD children's examinations. And it's in the gallery till August. So I was overwhelmed. And then my brother said to me recently, because I chat to him every week, he said, "Sis, do you realise that photograph that's at the RAD now is the one that Mum had on her dressing table all those years?
Oh, wow.
It was her favourite photograph of
how
you."
amazing.
And there it is at the RAD.
Yeah.
You know, how many years afterwards? You know, I was 10. I was 10 years old, and now I'm like 100, and you know, I'm in the autumn of my life.
You've got years left in you.
Anita, you're going to be around longer than I am.
And then so did you always know you wanted to go to the Royal Ballet School? How did that all happen?
No, not at all. Nothing like that at all. It was really weird.
Well, you were dancing for fun back then,
Yeah,
presumably.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And even I went to a comprehensive school, and I was very unhappy there. I was beaten up by a group of girls, treated really badly. I remember being locked in cupboards and having water thrown over me from a great height, drenched. And in the end, my mum had to escort me to the school. I mean, it was awful for me because I did ballet.
Yeah.
And I actually danced in one of their Christmas shows, which made it worse for me. So I was targeted.
Yeah.
But the English teacher, called Mrs. Egford, Grace Egford, she had taught Peter Wright and Antoinette Sibley and Georgina Parkinson at Covent Gardens, as it was then. Wow. And she taught at the school where I was, but in the grammar part. And in those days, you could actually stop people in the street. You can't do it now because of child protection and health and safety. But she lived the street away from me. And she stopped me in the street going home, and she said, "You're very unhappy in the school, aren't you?" And I said, I was worried because she's a teacher.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I am a little bit." So she said, "I'd like to come round and chat to your parents one evening." So I spoke to my mum and dad about it.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, she's an English teacher. She must be all right." You know? So she came round one evening, and she said, "You know, I used to teach at the upper school, as it was then, Covent Gardens. And she said, if you're interested, I could do all the paperwork for Anita to audition for the Royal Ballet School." Well, my mum and dad didn't know anything about the Royal Ballet School.
Yeah.
We were clueless, never heard of White Lodge.
Yeah.
Anyway, she did all the necessary paperwork, and the next thing I was auditioning. And I got through the first round, and I remember being the tallest in the class. And I came and I said, well, there's no way they're going to ask me. I'm too old, because I was nearly 12 and the
Right.
others were all 9.
Yeah.
In those days, they took them at 9 years
Yeah.
of age for prep form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got through that, and then I had the final audition, and Beryl Gray was sitting there.
Yeah.
Wow.
With a red hat and a red costume. I can see it now.
Isn't it funny the things that we remember from
Yeah.
these experiences?
She was a ballerina,
Yeah.
and she was like one of my, heroines. I thought, her and Margot,
Yeah.
if you remember at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I thought, my God, we got a ballerina. My God. And then I remember Miss Roche. I'll tell you a bit more about Miss Roche in a minute. Nora Roche. I remember her taking my leg and put it up in à la seconde to see, obviously, my flexibility. And I remember there was a sort of like that from the panel. Not that I was very flexible, but, I suppose I wasn't too bad. And then after that, I guess I waited a few weeks. I went for a scholarship because my parents couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I won a scholarship to go, and I went into third form, which is year 9.
Right.
And what was the training like?
Well, I had Nora Roche, who was an amazing teacher. I think she had been there for 27 years. She was, I would say, married to the job. So it was basically RAD and Chiquetti
Yeah.
influence. So we did our RAD exams, and we also did our Chiquetti exams.
Yeah.
So a combination of the two. We had
That's
lovely Joan Lawson was there. I mean, these were great
Yeah.
teachers. And actually, at the end of the day, a method is only as good as the teacher anyway.
Of course, but then you, especially if you're using the two, you've got the RAD and the Cicchetti.
Yeah.
You've got two sort of like
Absolutely.
same focus but different methodologies behind it to help.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a company, you stand in the line, say she's RAD, she's Cicchetti, she's BBO. You're either a good dancer or you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, when I did my thesis on my Cicchetti, when I was doing my fellowship, I actually said to Nora, I said, can I write about you? Because it's about you.
Yeah.
It's about how you interpret it and how we work with you.
Definitely,
I mean,
yeah.
she was amazing. I've got so much time for
And how you
her.
interpret the syllabus and then
Absolutely.
use it for the
Absolutely.
students that you've got in front of you. Because the syllabus is only, like you say, it's only as good as
Yeah.
the teacher and how the teacher sort of manipulates that, if you like, for
Absolutely.
the students, isn't it?
I couldn't agree with you more. But no, predominantly it was really both, yeah. And of course, Madam was always there on a Wednesday, Devalwa.
Yeah.
She taught you.
She was always, yeah, she was, I had her in grads. So I did 3 years with Nora
Yeah.
Yeah.
at White Lodge, 3rd, 4th and 5th form. I went to up the upper school. I did a year with Miss May, Pamela May, who was wonderful.
Wow.
Cigarette in the mouth,
Yeah.
And we're doing an adage and she forgot her counts and she was correcting someone and we'll be holding our breath and going, and 7 and 8. Yeah, I remember it so well. Absolutely. So she had a little drawer on the cigarette. It's a bit like Hilda Gaunt in The Company. She used to have a stout on the piano. A glass of stout while
Yes.
she's playing, what was her favourite? Dvorak. She did a wonderful piece that we
Yeah.
had from Rhonda Jones. But I mean, memories. All these people have so much colour. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Big personalities.
Characters.
Huge characters. So I did a year with Miss May, and then I got into grads, and we had Madam.
Was that the final year?
That was my final year before
Yeah.
I joined the company.
Yeah.
In '68 on Valentine's Day. Yes, Valentine's Day, 14th of February. In fact, I took my medal on the 13th of February at Buckingham Palace. Isn't that strange? Almost the day that I joined
Wow.
the company. Even that's strange, isn't it? The day before.
It's full circle.
Yeah, you might as well say.
Yeah. It's another
Day.
circle.
It is another circle. All those years on,
Yeah.
and here I was at Buckingham Palace, But no, I joined the company. 11 o'clock in the morning, I signed the contract. I remember it so well.
How did they decide, or how was it offered to you, the job?
Well,
Or did they sort of know that you were destined for the
I was
company?
already working with the company. I was
Yeah.
already doing swans. I was already covering Nutcracker, Snowflakes, Waltz of the Flowers. But the strangest thing was Ashton came in. We wore a number. My number was number 13. I have two lucky numbers, 7 and 13.
Right.
And I had 13 on. And I had to do the Lilac Fairy solo.
At what age?
I mean, I'm not exactly a lilac fairy, am I? And I thought, my God, he's taking me in the company on the lilac fairy. But the first thing I did was Nutcracker, and it was Rudolph Nureyev's Nutcracker.
Right.
And the girl who should have been doing the Waltz of the Flowers, she hurt her back, and I was on. And I remember I had Davy Gale and lovely Frank Freeman. And we started the waltz. I don't know if any of you know, if you've seen the video, we start with bourrées going around the stage. And I didn't know where I was going. And there's Frank saying, we're just follow me, we'll be all fine. He was talking he was talking me all the way through it to where I was going to start. And then I did the pressage at the end of the waltz with Davy Gale. And it was memorable. I mean, I was with Laura Connor, Leslie Collier, not Deanne Bergsman, Deanne Hall. I mean, there were so many. They were all choreographers and soloists, and then there was me. So it was great. And it was televised, it was televised. And then we went to New York. We did 6 weeks in New York.
Was Madam the director at that point?
No, Madam was director
There's-
of the school.
yeah,
She was
yeah.
still with the school.
He was of the company.
So with the school, you still had Ashton, you had John Field and Michael Soames. In fact, Michael Soames, when I joined the company, and I told my students this actually, he took me to the studio off the Waverley at the old Royal Ballet School in Talgarth Road. And he had his monocle in his eye. And he said, I have two things to say to you, young, because I didn't have a name, it was always young. He said, be nice to the people on the way up, young, because you're going to meet them on the way down, and you're as good as your last performance.
Yeah.
And if you remember those two things, you should do well in the Royal Ballet Company. Welcome. Goodbye. And then he walked, and then he walked out the studio and left me with my face going, But do you know what? I've always taken that on board
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
is so true. You know, I remember seeing so many brilliant performances. I mean, brilliant. Because I was there when it was all choreographed. You know,
Yeah.
it was, Myelin, Manon. I was an original and all that. Elite Syncopations. I was in Beatrix Potter. I was in the film. So I was there when it was all created.
Yeah.
And it was so strange because my mum would say to me, did anyone ever talk about the performance last night? You know, I was there, it was amazing. I said, no, it's just another day.
Yeah.
Another day at the office. You know, you carry
That's
on.
it, yeah.
You carry on the rehearsals, you're preparing for the next thing, and that's gone.
Yeah.
I said, and that's how you are. You're as good as that last performance. She could never get her head around
Yeah.
it because she would talk about it for weeks and months, you know,
That's
seeing
it, yes.
Margot
Yeah.
and Rudy
Yeah.
dancing, or Svetlana Beryosova, I mean, Lynn Seymour, all these people, you know, they were all Rudolph.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Yeah.
there with all of those people.
And what we call heritage now, you were that generation that created those, what we call the classics
Yes,
now
yes.
of British ballet.
Yes, yes.
So what was that like?
Well, I
with
danced
Ashton and Macmillan.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Ashton was so musical. Well, they both were. I mean, all these wonderful choreographers.
Yeah.
You know, Jerome Robbins doing concert. I mean, they were inside the score.
Yeah.
They knew it inside out and backwards. Ashton would never count anything. It was just learn the music. So you learnt the whole thing. I could sing the whole of Dream. I could sing the whole of everything.
Yeah.
Because you were, like I said, you were inside the music. There was no counts. And you can argue counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the music, it's just there.
Yeah.
You just know it.
Yeah.
You just know on ping and la la la, you're
Yes.
going to be there in a place or whatever. So yeah. I felt so blessed. We had Sir Adrian Bolt conduct Enigma Variations, and I happened to be in that performance when he did it. I mean,
Wow.
bliss. And Yehudi Menuhin played
Yeah.
the violin in Swan Lake, and I was a signet with Margot and Rudy dancing, you know, in the Royal Box, all lit up. You know, when you've had people like that, you've worked alongside them, you've had the privilege, the honour,
Yes.
and they were so humble. They're so humble. They were so humble, these people. I was just been blessed. I've been blessed with two amazing careers, actually.
So, Anita, when you're obviously dancing at the company, at what point did you know it was time to stop? Because I always find this really interesting with ballet dancers. You put your life and soul into it, and then there's a point where you think, I'm going to stop, or could go a few more years, or I'm ready to stop now. Is there a point when you know that?
I was always interested in teaching and coaching, even while I was in the company. And I was getting, 28, 29. And I thought, well, I was a soloist and I had done a lot of roles.
And you joined early as well,
I joined
earlier
when
than they
I
do
was
now.
I was 17
Yeah.
and I did a lot of things. And I knew, I've always been realistic, always. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go any further. Do I stay and stagnate? Because, I think, artists are creative people. And I needed to do something to enrich what I was doing. So I thought long and hard. And actually, I'll tell you what happened. It was Ronnie Emblin, who was teaching at Arts Education at that time. He was an amazing Widow Simone, by the way, in La Film Garde, for those that would remember. He stopped me. These people that stop me in the street. Again,
There's a name for people like that, Anita.
Again, it's another circle, isn't it? If you think about it, I was stopped when I was a child, 11-year-old, nearly 12, and now I'm stopped, coming up to sort of late 20s. And he said to me, I think you'll be a fantastic children's teacher, Anita. Have you thought of doing a teacher's course? And it's funny because I thought it was an insult. I was still a dancer.
Yeah.
It was like he was telling me, in my silly brain, I kept on thinking, he's telling me to give up and do, Anyway, like everything else, I always used to talk things over with my mum. My mum was a very down-to-earth woman. Everyone loved my mum. She was just one of those people. She had a good brain. And I chatted to her. I said, what do you think, Mum? She said, well, it's another string to your bow, dear. Go for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she said, what have you got to lose? You can only better yourself. So while I was in the company, on a Tuesday and Friday, I used to work with Nora Roche, who taught me at White Lodge when I was 12. So I went back, another circle, I went back to her, my late 20s, and I was with other company members that also did their Chikeshi exams, and I was still fit. I could get up and do the work. So I used to do my exams, and then I took my fellowship. By that time, Nora was very, very ill. She had cancer, and she was having treatment on Tuesday and Friday. She used to come from the hospital. Can you believe it? These amazing people in your life. She had had transfusions and still came to help me.
Wow.
And I remember it was getting very near the end of her life, and I went to her house, and I did all my adages, my Chikeshi adages in her living room. And she was very ill. And she said to me after, I can talk about it now, a few years ago, I would burst into tears at this point, but I'm quite composed. But she said to me, I want you to go back to White Lodge and carry on my work. At that time, I thought, hello. But you know what? I did. I did. And when I left the Royal Ballet Company, I went up to Manchester. I was
Centre of the Western Hemisphere. Can I just say that?
I was ballet mistress to Northern Ballet Theatre.
Were you?
And it was.
I didn't know that.
And it was the time.
Didn't you?
No.
No, it was the time we had the riots in Manchester.
Yeah.
And we were in Zion Crescent, and they didn't.
Yes,
they didn't
at the
touch,
Zion, yeah.
that's right. They didn't touch my car. They kept it intact. I'd have a smashed up windscreen.
Right,
All
and
the tyres.
here's another
but-
full circle for you, because my professional company career started at Northern Ballet
Oh, my
Theatre. Yeah, but I mean, back when they'd moved to Leeds and things like that in the 2000s.
So they were based in Manchester.
Yeah, originally, yeah.
Yeah. So
And then they went to Halifax and then eventually over to Leeds.
Yeah, my director was Robert de Warren. And so I was there with, great people. But I do remember, I'm trying to think of her name. Oh, gosh, it'll come to me in a minute. A lot of them now probably worked in the West End. They gave up the ballet, like Lynn Jezard, Alex
Lynn.
Worrell.
Yes.
Alex
Yeah.
Worrell. Who else? Jenny Chang.
Denise Whiteman.
Yes,
People like that.
Jenny Chang. She used to have a little dog called Jenny. And then Robert Mead had a dog called Jenny. And when they said, Jenny, come here, the two dogs
Both
used
dogs.
to And we had such fun. But no, they left my car alone. Well, I didn't get beaten up or anything. I think they felt sorry for us, But I did nearly 2 years, and then I got a very serious illness.
Right.
And nearly died. And I'm very lucky to be here. My husband, being the hero that he is, he came up on his bike to Manchester and drove me back because I said I didn't want to die only in London.
I don't want to die up north.
So I was in Queen Mary's Hospital in Roehampton. I lost my hair. My skin buckled. I healed. It took me a year to get over the illness. And they said I'd never have children, but I proved them wrong, be good old resilient me.
Yeah.
And then I had my son in 1984. So I was very lucky. But that was the end of my career as a ballet mistress.
Yeah.
And then I came back to London. And then
Do you think if you'd not had those circumstances, you'd probably still be a ballet mistress or working at company level?
Yes, probably. Yeah. And actually, going back, because you asked me about dancing, before I actually gave up as a dancer, I did have a chance to work with Festival Ballet then.
Oh, yeah.
And it was when Beryl Gray was director. And I remember I did the class, Betty Anderton gave the class, wonderful. Beryl went off to the dentist. She forgot I was auditioning, bless her. And when I came back, she said, oh, you're the girl auditioning. So she said, can you do a penchant en chassis for me? Which I did. She said, I think you'd be a wonderful Rosalinda. So she'd cast me as Rosalinda.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, 2 weeks later, the company changed and things, as we know.
Yeah.
So I missed out on that. But, actually that was the deciding factor for me. I knew that I had a crossroads and that was it.
And things happen for a reason.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
I've always believed in that. I always believed in fate.
Yes.
Always. So that was the time to move on
Yeah.
and take up teaching. And actually, I haven't looked back as a teacher. I was a JA teacher. I was in charge of the JAs at Sugler's Wells. And then I was an MA teacher at the Royal Ballet School.
And presumably you loved it from day one.
Oh, I love teaching.
Yeah.
Yes, I love teaching. I've always liked helping someone. Even in the company, Michael Soames used to call me Madam Cicchetti and give me chances to do warm-ups, in the pit lobby or the crush bar, because we didn't have a studio at the Opera House then. We didn't have any of that. So there are warm-ups on carpet, with all the So I used to give the company bar and kind of measure how I was doing through the company, because they don't.
Well, that's the most honest reaction, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You can get.
They're either going to turn up or they walk out the class.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this as a pianist as well. If you see the company members rolling their eyes and they leave after plie, you're like, that was not great.
You learn your trade pretty quick, don't you? So, Michael Soames was very, very good that far. It was brilliant. So, and then I carried on. I went to
when you were doing the JAs.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was your first proper teaching gig.
Yes, and I'm still in touch with all of those people now.
Wow.
Yes, they're all in wonderful positions, and it's great. Again, another circle. To see them all and teach their children is incredible.
Yeah, and where did you go from the JAs?
I Bridget Espinosa was looking for a teacher to replace Juan Sanchez, who did Cicchetti work at London Studio Centre.
Right.
And he was leaving to go to Barcelona to start a ballet company. So they found out about me. Actually, he knew me, and he said, well, why don't you go and see if you can do the old class at London Studio Centre. Anyway, I remember it was a Thursday afternoon. I got very good brain. 5:30 in the afternoon. One girl.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. That's fine. And Biddy came. And she sat there and watched me. And afterwards she said, Bridget Espinosa, she said, I'd like you to join our school. I can't promise you much work at the moment, but we'll see how you go, right?
Yeah.
So one class on a Thursday afternoon at 5:30 led to me being in charge of 2-year groups, in a first year and a second group. And I was there 16 years.
Blimey neck.
16 years.
So that's the London Studio Centre.
So, but during that time, because I was still a freelance person, I taught at West Street School. I did Tring, Arts Education, both London, Tring, Betty Lanes in Epsom, Stella Mann, you name it, I was there.
So you had a teaching freelance career.
Absolutely. Yeah. I put on shows. I put on, Doris Day. I put on, salsas, all sorts of things. I've always been an all-rounder. I've never been, the bun-head with pink tights. I mean, as a child, I did all the competitions. I did all the blind baby competitions. I was an all-England winner. In fact, that's another circle, because at the age of 10, I was given the all-England title. My dad was working in Covent Garden Market, and I said to my mum, will my dad be there to watch me dance? And she said, well, I can't promise you anything. She said, because, he's a night worker.
Yeah.
My dad worked during the night. And the competition was early in the morning. But you know what? The lights went out, and I saw this body coming in, and he sat in the front row at the end. It was my dad.
And it was Dad.
It was my dad. And I won the competition. I got the All England. And then years later, Brenda Last said to me, would you like to adjudicate the All England competition? And I said, believe it or not, in 1960, I actually won this. It's incredible. Yeah, I actually went on the stage and I said, and I gave it to the girl who did the classical variation. This was me in 1960.
Whoa!
So it made, it's been incredible. My life has been incredible, really has.
Sort of coming forward to present day a bit. When you started teaching, because we've all played for you. The three of us have.
Poor you. Did you? Did you have to have an injection? And then,
but can I say something? So I think played for you once, and it's probably like 15 years ago. And I was still earlier, like maybe my first year as a ballet pianist. And I went to White Lodge because one of the pianists was on the jury service.
Yeah.
And I never played in the maybe I did some vocational schools, but White Lodge, and it's just a place. It's like a miracle. No?
Yeah.
It's like a film. And then I walked down the corridor as a pianist took me to the studio, and all the students give me this little curtsy. And I was like, oh my God, what's this place? Yeah. I went in this studio, and you were there teaching, and I played for you. And oh gosh, I just loved it. Like your voice your like a jolliness, just the energy, and I was like, this is amazing, and I just enjoyed the whole class. And at the end, and was throughout the class, you were just so communicative with the pianist. And then I remember clearly that you made sure that students appreciate the musicians.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
And I just, because I was still like baby ballet pianist, and it was just amazing experience, and I still remember it clearly that day.
But you know what? The music, it either makes or breaks a class. We all know that. You can give perhaps the most amazing combination, but if you're not inspired by the music, it can die.
Yeah.
And I know when I was in the company, we used to have Philip Gammon play for us. I mean, we had great musicians, don't get me wrong, but he was exceptional. He used to play, as you know, for the performances
Everything,
of
yes.
dancers at a gathering, concert. I mean, he was the number one and a lovely, humble man too. But when he used to come and play for us, we always go, "Oh, we got Philip today." I mean, that's how the company worked. Oh, we got Philip.
Yeah.
So you had Rachmaninoff for piano, and then you'd have Scott Joplin for something else, and then the Beatles, because again there was so much variety so you could absorb.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Like a ballet class can be a smorgasbord of absolutely everything, and it's got to be inspiring for everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's got to,
and you can see that with the students.
Yeah, it supports and leads as well at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, I was fortunate that during my younger days, I used to listen to Billy Cotton Band Show on the wireless. We called it not a radio, it was a wireless then, on a Sunday. And my grandmother used to say, "We're going to put Billy Cotton on now. We can all have a..." and then my auntie, who was interested in the arts, she was the one that actually took me to ballet, not my mum, because my mum was always working.
Yeah.
My aunt used to take me to a place in Oxford Street. It was the old BBC studios. And we used to do old-fashioned dancing, old-time dancing. And we used to get up and do the Velita and the military two-step. You know what I'm saying? And then even at school, we used to have... I'm trying to work. It was on a Friday, and it was country dancing.
Yeah, like maypole stand.
We used to do all the country dancing
and Scottish dancing,
Morris dancing.
It was on the curriculum.
Sword dancing,
and then we used to sit down. I remember when I was 6, and they used to close the curtains after assembly, and they used to put on Peter and the Wolf. And then we had to imagine what it was like to be all these animals and move through. You know what I mean? So you were firing your imagination the whole time.
That's quite funny. So this year, I was playing for Royal Ballet School current first year girls, one class. And the teacher's Sarah Kundi. You taught her?
I taught Sarah, yes.
Yeah, and then she wanted to use one of the tune that you use for certain exercise. And then the girls started to sing, all the girls. And I was like, why? Like, everybody knows this tune, and everybody started to do this exercise with singing. And then the girls started to say, Miss Young taught us that you have to sing along to remember the exercises.
You sing inside you, because that's also breathing.
All the students knew the tune.
From White Love.
It was the wheels on it. Yum, ba-dun.
Not that one.
Not that one.
Rossini, the Thieving Magpie.
Yes, and we've all got that in our arsenal now, don't we? And it's called Anita's.
Yes,
Anita's Rossini.
No, but it's true. But you're absolutely true, because I used to sing when I was teaching year 7. It was we used to do the different degrees of jumping. You know? 25, 45, 60 degrees, 90, 25, 45. We haven't done that yet.
No, we haven't.
We haven't done that yet, but that will come. But they always knew that.
Mark, get that one in your arsenal.
They always knew that was coming up in class, and they all used to sing. They used to say, Miss Young's tune, the Grand Bat one, is coming up. But we've got a few ones, haven't we?
Yeah, but what I want to ask you...
he hasn't said a word of his own. I'm going to have a drink.
You have a swig while I ask my question.
Yeah, I know.
It's the only way you can get Anita to shut up is by getting a drink.
I know. But because you're going to take the batteries out. Go on.
Well, because all your exercises are fantastic. And they always come with a context, or this is where this school has come from, or this is the person that created this. When did you start sort of compartmentalizing all that those repertoire of steps and exercises and amalgamations. And then when did you assign a tune to that? Has that just happened sort of organically as you've gone through your teaching career?
I think so.
Because now it's so established, your work and the music that goes with it and where it's come from and what that, the system of training, that's what it leads on to.
Yeah. Well, again, as you know, I love music.
Yeah.
Even in the company, I remember, was it Philip Gannon or was it Donald Twine? It was one of those two. Said, would you come we're going to put you in the orchestra pit. You're going to turn over the pages for Les Noces. Gosh. And I did. And I was more nervous for that than actually getting up and doing a solo because, if I did it wrong, you know how difficult Les Noces is. That's Stravinsky's score. Yeah. So I've always had a passion for music. I love music. Remember, when I was a student, we had to work with the opera. That was a part of our apprenticeship, And, my first opera was Turandot. And then I was in Aida and Kavanchina. And, even as a student, I used to pay £1, go up in the slips with one of my best friends, and we used to watch Cavan Pag. The Ring I couldn't quite cope with because I thought I'm going to get a sore bum, after 6 hours sitting on a cushion. But I loved opera. I love all music. To me, that fires my belly, full stop.
I can't believe it was £1 for a ticket.
Well, remember how old I am.
Prehistoric.
I am Antiques Roadshow sitting here. As you can see.
I need to, on a Sunday evening, you'd be worth a bloody fortune.
Yes, here.
Those cash bells would be ringing.
Oh, wow.
But going back to what you said, I've been fortunate. I worked with great people, Madam Julia Farron. I mean, these were not just good teachers, they were great teachers.
Yeah.
And when they do a great combination that has everything in it, the musicality content, you understand why you're doing this.
Or it references a ballet or something.
The context, yes, you understand it all. And where the highlights are going to be in that on Shame, and it's not just, painted by numbers or what I call pasted on ballet. You understand?
Yes.
So when you work with these great people, you think, oh my God, I can, I can shape it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make it my own. But going back to when I say people, I think it shouldn't be about me, myself, and I. If somebody great has given me a little, saying all that, why shouldn't I say Aurora Bosch said this to me when I was in Central Ballet School? She used to say, these certain things. We used to do all our chats in the toilet. She used to be in one cubicle and I used to be in the other. Do you know what I mean? She was a very generous woman.
Yeah. I love Aurora Bosch.
And I think,
fabulous.
With Aurora, Brenda Last, these are generous.
I love Brenda.
Generous human beings. They're givers. You know what I mean? They're not takers. They're not someone who's going to, I'll take it to me, to the grave with me. When you're here, you give. You give in your life. And you get it back anyway in other ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
With an MBE.
My bloody effort. There you go.
That is the hashtag for this episode, isn't it? Hashtag my bloody effort.
Yeah. My bloody effort, their bloody effort.
Yeah, but I did the biggest curtsy. I forgot to tell you. When I was at Buckingham Palace, I said to my brother, I'm going to do the deepest curtsy.
Oh, I bet they really appreciated it as well.
I did. It was a bit hard to get up with my knees. I did do it, but I did do it, yeah. But no,
And actually, Princess Anne has got a great curtsy. Because when the Queen passed away and that coffin was going past her, it was a correct curtsy.
She'd been watching me.
Yeah.
She learned from the best.
She was watching my bloody effort.
So when did the sort of international work come in?
Well, again, while I was still at the school, Gayleen Stock, who was my previous director, she did allow me to do summer schools abroad, like in Italy and Australia, when she came from Australia herself. So I was able to kind of spread my wings a little bit.
Can I list the countries you've worked in?
Well, last year
I'm going to do it.
Okay. I'm going to be quiet.
So
take a gulp.
For the listeners, Anita has worked in, listen to this, the UK, Japan, Australia, Malta, Germany, USA, South Africa, Italy, Canada, New Zealand, Holland, and France.
It's not a
Mic
bad
drop.
list.
Did you say Hong Kong?
China, no.
China, Hong Kong. Yeah, because I went to Hong Kong. Yeah,
That's incredible. How many is that?
13.
Wow.
13.
I mean, that's an international career
Yeah.
as a.
Yeah, I've done very well for
But you do
myself.
examining, you do adjudicating,
Yeah.
you do teaching.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And when other countries want the quintessential British heritage work,
Yeah.
you're sort of their go-to.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I do.
And presumably all those international directors speak to each other as well and say,
Yes,
oh,
they
you've got to
do.
get Nita.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of. Well, remember when I did those ballets, it was with the choreographers.
Yeah.
And you
yeah,
had all
yeah.
the little pearls of wisdom.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
Which you wouldn't. Well, I'm not saying that because that would be unfair, but a lot of it's learnt from a video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or notation, which is good, but they're not going to give you the real flavour of it.
It's not the same.
Do you know
That's
what I'm
it. Yeah.
saying? Do you know what I'm saying? Like if somebody said, "Oh, that was done when the twist was out," you know,
Yeah.
a social dance of the
Yeah, yeah,
'60s,
yeah.
and that was based on the twist, and that was based on the
Twist and shout.
and that was that
Yeah.
was me, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's all those it's those little things, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you can't put on paper. So
And
I was very, so I was
that
very,
comes
I was
out
very
in
lucky.
that comes out in your teaching as well.
Does it?
Yeah.
I know I don't stop talking.
No, but for me as well, as a sort of self-confessed bunhead, I really love all that. You know, that, Ashton was informed by Giacchetti.
Yes.
And it's all in that work
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And things like that.
Yeah.
That's very true because like experienced teacher like you, and I sit in the corner of the studio and I learn all the histories and the styles and things that I never knew because I never knew ballet before,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's quite like it's really amazing to listen.
No, I mean these people, like your Ashton, Jerome Balanchine. I was coached by Balanchine in Argonne. I danced with Rudolph, and to have Balanchine coach you is something really super.
Yeah.
I remember Pat Neary. She came over first.
Wow. Yeah.
And when she saw me, her exact words were, "Well, you're a little shrimp. Are you going to get up and do Argonne?" And I thought, yes.
Rude.
I don't think you can get away with that today.
No.
No.
But this little shrimp actually did get up and do Argonne, and it just shows you what you can do when you get out your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Maybe doing the Lilac Fairy helped.
Yeah, the fire in the belly, yeah.
All those years ago. Do you remember when I wasn't that? I was a soubrette, really.
Yeah.
To get up and do
Yeah.
those things. So yeah, I will always challenge.
Sometimes.
You went to ask me all these things, and I never answered it because I was rapiding on.
It's all right. She's seen my notes.
I taught the chicken dance to the footballers in Lillyshaw.
Where's Lily Shaw?
Well, that's their main. All the
In the US?
No,
Where is it?
Lillyshaw is up north.
Oh,
It's
is it?
Shropshire.
All right.
So we use the Is that you? Is that me? That's me.
That's
me.
Anita's
Anita's phone
That's
ringing.
me. That's my old man.
Oh, let's see who it is. Let's see who it is.
Hello.
How are you doing? How did you get
It
on,
went.
right?
Did it go well? Have I gone well?
It's
Did it
going
go
well.
It went well. It went well. We're still doing things.
Good. I enjoy your day. I'll catch up with you later on. Just wanted to say.
All right, sweetheart. All right. Love you lots. See you soon. Bye, darling. Don't forget to get the chili con carne and the beans. Have you got? Oh, he's hung up on me.
There's no chili con carne for you tonight.
I think listeners, viewers, that is a good place to leave it. Chris, will you just do a couple of calls to action, please? Can you remember any?
No, I could not. Right, listeners, if you want to follow us on social media, we are at Ballet Piano Podcast on Instagram and Facebook.
And YouTube.
Oh,
You can watch us on YouTube now, which is if you just go on YouTube and type in Ballet Piano Podcast, we appear.
Oh.
And if you want to email us, you want to go old-fashioned, slightly old-fashioned, we are balletpianopodcast@gmail.com.
On that note, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
I was just thinking of a song. I'm actually lost to say something. Ciao, ciao.
To say goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you.